Can a small team from Singapore really take on Meta, Apple, and Google with a pair of AI glasses that are completely open source? In these episodes, I'm joined by BOBAK Tavangar, co-founder of Brilliant Labs, the company behind Halo, the lightweight AR glasses powered by AI.
Ben and I started the company with the idea that this next shift in computing, not only it had to be open source, but it had to enable AI to see and hear and understand your life in the way that your eyes and ears and mind might do so.
But how does an open source pair of glasses compete with billion-dollar ecosystems? We'll talk about what Halo can and cannot do and why they build it to serve you as a second brain.
We can capture streams of audio and video that allows an AI agent to be maximally helpful throughout your day. But what happens with that data?
They won't allow you to vibe code your own app.
And with natural language, either spoken or typed, you can imagine an app that you want running on Halo, and it'll compose all of the code. Noah will do that, and then it'll upload that app in front of your eyes.
We take a look at what he learned from testing dozens of AI models for smart glasses.
On the vision side, we've been loving the models. They're doing some incredible stuff. If this bubble ever pops, it'll be companies like that'll survive.
Privacy first, all-day battery life, open SDK, it's almost sound too good to be true. So how did they manage to pull it off and sell the device for just $300?
That was not easy. I mean, that's a real achievement of hardware design, firmware, and software development. If you can't price it for the mass market, it's just not ready. Unless we could offer beautiful, affordable device that was still open source, had the full range of sensors, and allowed people to do some pretty cool stuff on top, then it really just wasn't right to offer that to markets.
But before we get into it, I wanted to thank our sponsor Meshi, who made this episode possible. Meshi is a real powerhouse for generating 3D assets with AI. You can start with a simple text or image prompt and get high-quality stylized 3D model in just a minute. Some of the recent feature updates include a new model with improved mesh and hard surfaces, the ability to input multi-view image for increased control on the output, and a brand new workspace where you can assemble your own scenes and use that as a prompt for video generation. Go to Mesh AI and try it out now. And now it's time to roll the title and welcome BOBAK under the spotlight. Tell us about Halo. What can and what cannot do today?
So I think that's a great way to frame the question. So there are some things that we very intentionally designed Halo and our broader platform to do, and some things that they're not ideal to do. So what they're for is AI inference over your life. We have very carefully selected a range of sensors, camera, microphone, speakers, display, the full range of sensors that are very low power, such that they're designed to give you all-day battery, even while processing the audio and imagery of your all-day life. And that allows an AI agent to become sort of a second brain. And we do this, of course, like you mentioned, in an entirely open source platform. So that means people can modify and build on top of that. Now, what it is not designed for is, for example, like what the Meta Ray-Bans do. Two big cameras that are really ideal for social media capture. So if you want to pipe your life over to Instagram, Meta Ray-Bans and all the other glasses copying them are probably a better bet there, not our platform. And so we're very intentional about that.
So the question is, how did you land it on this, right? Because, this is not the first pair of glasses that you push on the market, literally, that you get developers to build on. So out of all the things that AR glasses promise us that they can do or they will be able to do, how did you gravitate towards this specific way of using these devices?
Well, Ben and I started the company very intentionally with the idea that this next shift in computing, not only it had to be open source, but it had to be oriented toward artificial intelligence. It had to enable AI to see and hear and understand your life in the way that your eyes and ears and mind might do so. And so we always had this notion that the deeper purpose for these devices needs to be something to enable intelligence to do something deeper for you, and not for something a little more sort of shallow like a momentary social media capture that if your phones do. And so, that really was always the intention for us. I think when we started the company, we were the only ones in the room. This was back in 2019. We were the only ones talking about AI in front of your eyes. And people would call us crazy. Literally people say, no, 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 no. Glasses, this is for, seeing something floating and seeing some graphical intensity. This was back when there were companies doing, goggles and
I remember,
headsets.
I clearly remember the magic leap, the whales in the gym,
That's
and
it.
let's not forget about that.
That's it. Yeah. When Apple first advertised AR kit, there was like a big T-Rex walking across a basketball court. And we always saw that and we said, that might be fine for VR, which is an entirely different user experience, different purpose in your life, but not for glasses, not something that is lightweight, you're putting on in the morning and ideally wearing throughout the day. So we've always been thinking a little different about this. And this year, yeah, the space is getting pretty crowded.
So you touch about a few things. One, the space being crowded, and of course, this very important and let's say not so shallow use case. But before getting into it, I want to understand a little bit about the glasses themselves. So there is, you mentioned a camera, there is AI, there is audio, there is a display. So maybe can you break those pieces apart and explain us how these all come together?
Yeah, for sure. And I'm wearing Halo right now. And so, Halo is just a lovely lightweight pair of glasses. It's about 40 grams in weight. So I can wear it all day. It doesn't feel too heavy on my nose or my ears. It's nicely balanced. It has a full color OLED display, and that projects at my eye when I just tilt my head down a little bit. And that's a roughly 20-degree field of view projection in front of my eye, full color. It has.
So
Go ahead. Yeah.
No, a quick question. So you mentioned when you tilt your head slightly forward. So doesn't mean that it's not continuously on, or like, can you elaborate on that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the way out of the box that we've designed it is so the tilt does not trigger the display. If the display is on, if it's trying to show you some information, you might see the light in the upper periphery, but it's only when you tilt your head down, just like I'm doing right now, that you actually see it come into view. Almost imperceptible to someone observing you. And so when you tilt your head back up, then of course it's out of your field of view and I'm just looking through my own prescription lenses. Now beyond that, it's got 2 microphones with edge activity detection. So that means that the whole system is sleeping until it hears audio, spoken audio, maybe a conversation you're having or an interaction, and then that will wake up the rest of the system. It's got a low power camera that's designed to be capturing over the day and still allow those batteries to last the entire day, which is pretty great. And then it has stereo speakers. So these are bone conduction speakers for minimal loss of audio, sort of leakage of audio, I should say, so that it's still discreet, when people are around you, but you're getting, the bone conduction straight in.
So you mentioned battery life being a key thing, right? Because of course you can have all sorts of like crazy stuff happening on the device itself, but then if it lasts 2 hours for a pair of glasses, it's not necessarily ideal. You also mentioning that the camera is kind of like always on recording, right? So does that mean really that the moment that I wear the glasses and let's say for the next 8-10 hours that I'm out, there is a video stream always on? Is that recorded? Does it stay somewhere? Or it's something that I can immediately, it stays on because I can ask it questions about, hey, remember this? Or other question throughout my day. How does that work, that whole day life and use case?
Yeah. So, I mean, you're highlighting something really important, which is, the data privacy, aspect of all of this. So it's great that we can have these sensors on. It's great that we can capture streams of audio and video that allows an AI agent to maximally understand your day, to be maximally helpful throughout your day. But what happens with that data? And there's a lot of privacy implication around that. The way we think about it, and this is an important distinction, we don't record and store any of that rich media. We capture it on the device, we pipe it down to your phone, And then very quickly, we do AI inference over the images, over the audio, and then we toss that source media. We do not store it. So none of that rich media is stored on our servers or anywhere else. It's only the resulting embeddings, that AI inference, which is, ultimately converted into an irreversible mathematic stream, a string of numbers, that is stored for AI recall. So that enables our memory feature on Halo. So if we want to allow you to recall the details of a conversation, or whether Gabrielle was wearing a gray t-shirt or a blue t-shirt, whatever it might be, anything you saw, anything you heard, you should be able to query and ask our AI Noah without worrying that all of the rich media of your life is stored indiscriminately on our server. Because, hey, God forbid, if that's ever leaked or someone gains access to it, then that's your whole life right there. So that's a key distinction. And most other companies that are trying to do this stuff, they don't treat your data that way. And so, we're trying to talk a little louder about this because it really matters.
So does that still mean then that there is something that goes on throughout the whole day, and then the battery lasts the whole day? No, I want to stress this, right? Because
totally,
this is another
pretty
thing.
Amazing. I know, right? Exactly.
So,
and just to dwell on that for a moment, that was not easy. I mean, that's a real achievement of, hardware, tight component selection, hardware design, firmware and software development, the full stack to make that happen in a way that not only protects your privacy, but also allows for a low power, consistent capture of data to allow that AI agent to have the full comprehensive picture of your day. So it's really a key enabler that doesn't exist right now in the industry. And so it further being open source, we think is going to open a lot of possibilities.
So you also mentioned another thing, and that is the app or the phone, right? So there are some of these devices that rely on the phone as or an external thing, right? And sometimes to input information, sometimes maybe as a battery external computing element. What role has a mobile device like a phone, if any, when using Halo?
So we're pragmatists. We think the phone is really useful. We think the phone is everywhere and it's going to be with us for a while longer. So we make use of it. We have a Bluetooth pair from Halo down to your phone, just like we did in previous devices. And we use your phone's connection to the internet kind of like a relay point. So today, what that means is all the data captured on Halo, it pipes down to your phone, and that then gets relayed up to the cloud for that sort of AI inference and then storage for later memory recall. Now, we will be making some announcements soon. We've been doing a lot of hard work to try to bring that AI inference even closer to your person, to the phone. So we want to keep that stuff as local as possible for the sake of privacy and low latency. So we'll make some announcements about that soon, but that's very much our vision, is that we continue to lean into the phone and the fact that all of us have one to do more and more of that AI inference locally.
So, of course, AI has been said, I think, by now 100 times, even in our conversation, maybe not hundreds, but certainly a dozen. Can you explain us? Can you explain us a little bit, how does that work? You mentioned Noah, and of course, there is a lot of this inference ongoing. Can you unpack that for us? And then we'll see which direction we take.
Sure. Yeah, so our whole Noah system, or Noah is sort of an umbrella term for us, for our AI system. And it's a bunch of models and other technology that do a few things. So one thing it does is it's a real-time conversational assistant. So when you ask a question about something you see or about something you hear or just an idea that you have, then that goes to one set of models and that will take in the speech and that'll output speech back to you. So you can see the response written in front of your eyes. You can hear the response from our Noah agent through the bone conduction speakers. And then you have sort of your visual question and answer, your real-time dialogue with an AI. Multimodal, anything you see and hear. So that's sort of one bucket. A second bucket is memory. So this one's very powerful. a passive stream of audio and video is piped into the Noah agent. And so even if you're not asking a question, it is doing inference over that. Like I said, it's throwing away the original source rich media, and then it is storing the resulting what's called embeddings. So those are just strings of math, storing that in a vector and graph database, and those two are linked. So we can understand not only, semantically the unfolding of your life, but also the linkage between all of these pieces of data, the people, the places, the objects, the events, all the goings on in your life linked, so we can understand the story. So that's useful for the agent to understand you better and better over time. And also, if you have a question about what happened in life, you can always ask Noah, and it'll be able to do that memory recall for you. So that's really powerful. That's memory. And then finally, we've got vibe coding. So it's a feature in our app called Vibe Mode. And with natural language, either spoken or typed, you can imagine an app that you want running on Halo, and it'll compose all of the code. Noah will do that, and then it'll upload that app in front of your eyes. So we did Vibe Mode because it's just a powerful way for people to compose apps for this new computing medium.
Okay. Because that thing is okay. First, let's start with the first AI side of things, right? And let's say the simplest back and forth conversation with this AI. What is the underlying model, right? So I imagine also this still runs on the cloud. You still needs to be connected to the internet somehow. How do you manage that conversation back and forth? And then my next follow-up question is that what about the image side of things, right? Because one thing is having a chat, one thing is recognizing the environment around you. So imagine you need to understand what is it, and that also relies on different models. So how does let's say the first conversational side of things work?
Yeah, so on the conversational side of things, those tend to be larger models that sit up in the cloud. And so for the speech to text, there's a bunch of services that can handle this. And we've been testing all of them. We tend to work with stuff that is not only fast and cost effective, but also multilingual. So Soniox is a company that we've been using their stuff for a little while now, very impressed with everything about the way that it works. And then the resulting text to speech out back to the user, there's a bunch of companies, again, from 11 Labs to DeepGram. There's a lot of folks that are working on this. And we use a speech to text package from a company called InWorld AI. So again, super fast, super cost effective. And, we're happy with the quality of the voice. Of course, it could always be better. It can always sound increasingly uncanny and more human-like. But, for the cost and latency, we're happy with what it is. But we're always looking for new releases from these companies, better models from other companies. That's a very dynamic landscape. And then the model in between, we've built this in a modular way so that you can use the latest and greatest from OpenAI or from Google or any other company that are doing, good, robust models, multimodal models, to be able to take images and speech in and then pipe, resulting inference back out.
So I know, in a way, a lot of people that are testing these models, of course, to embed them in so many different ways. Sometimes they want an avatar that is in a virtual environment to talk. Sometimes they're using just an audio interface. Now, when testing all these options, right, that are right now available on the market, what have you learned that maybe you can share with people when it comes to finding a way of what parameters works best, or navigate the complexity of so many options? What advice could you give?
This is a great question. And, right now, if I take a step back for a moment, we're still at a point in time where all of these solutions to deploy consumer applications at large scale, large numbers, they are still quite expensive. The cumulative cost of doing hundreds and thousands, tens of thousands of model calls across the entire range of the features that we're aiming to deliver, every single day is expensive. And so you're easily at millions of dollars a month if you're not extremely careful about which model, which service provider, and how often you call the right model. So it's something that we, are extremely thoughtful, extremely careful about designing. So we're always looking for a solution which brings the right mix of low latency, in the speech feature specifically, something that brings low latency, something that's able to deliver that at a really affordable cost, both in and out. And then, of course, something that, brings the right level of quality as well, because you don't want the cheapest and fastest solution that falls all over itself because it just can't deliver what people need it to deliver. So it's difficult. And there's unfortunately no great way other than just making human contact with these companies, peeling back the layers of their marketing language to go deeper into the actual technology, taking the models for a spin in your use case, not an idealized setting that they might have marketed or have readily available in some test environment. And it's only through that process that we start to really understand how they stack up. So things are still quite manual intensive.
And so you mentioned this is, of course, very highly dependent on also the business model in a way, right? In a sense that if you charge a subscription, then maybe you could afford a certain kind of models and prices. If you don't, then there is a different ballgame. So in the case of Halo, where have you landed? How does this AI connection work?
Yeah, so we looked at that, and we just looked at some of the costs around all of this stuff. And, unfortunately, it's not something that we can, basically we can't do what Meta does, which is eat hundreds of millions of dollars of model costs, let alone the marketing and the hardware costs. But we won't get into that. Just model costs, just inference. We just can't eat that, that much volume. And so it's unfortunately something that we need to pass on to the end customer to some degree. And so we have an out-of-the-box free tier. So, just like ChatGPT, there's like usage limits. You use ChatGPT, the free version, and you can dialogue with it. And eventually you hit your limit and it says, hey, come back tomorrow. So Noah works the same exact way. Now, if you want to lift some of those caps, then you pay us $19.99 a month. And that lifts the cap significantly. So then you can do almost as much real-time dialogue, multimodal real-time dialogue as you want per day. Vibe coding apps for Halo. And then, of course, the memory side of things. You can have as many memory queries as you want a day. And that $19.99 a cap will satisfy that. So we work just the way ChatGPT works.
So I want to move into this vibe coding and more broadly, the kind of applications that can be built on these devices, because that's, I think, is going to be key. Before, I just want to double down on one question. And that is, when you, besides the voice to text and text to voice that you have mentioned, the actual processing of the answer that you ask, in a sense, so the generation of the answer, does it happen with ChatGPT, with Claude, with what kind of AI model sits under the hood, let's say?
So yeah, on the conversational side of things, it might be Google, it might be a Gemini, maybe the 2.5 Flash. But then we've built it in a way that it's modular. So if OpenAI comes out with a model that we love, then we can easily swap out the Gemini model for the OpenAI model or anything else. So we try to make sure that layer of the stack is always modular, because there's so much evolution. There's so many new amazing models coming out. So we wouldn't want to tie ourselves down unduly. Now, and this is sort of speaking to your earlier question, on the memory side of things, we use an entirely different set of models, because memory is constantly humming. Even if you're not asking a question, then we're still taking these snippets of images and audio here and there throughout the day, and we're stringing those together. We're structuring that stuff on the back end. And the agent, Noah, is learning over that. So it's understanding your daily life as you live it, which is so powerful. So to do that, we needed to select a smaller class of models, which could hum in the background and do so in a way that was accurate and fast, optimized for CPU or low-end GPU, and still, cost-effective and high quality. So, on the vision side, we've been loving the models from Liquid AI, and we announced a partnership with them a few weeks back. They're doing some incredible stuff, and we think they're sort of, if we were to make a long-term bet on a foundation model maker, it would be Liquid. If this bubble ever pops, it'll be companies like Liquid that'll survive. So we love the stuff they're doing, and it's really optimized for bringing inference close to the edge while still keeping the quality high. On the audio side of things, NVIDIA, for example, has put out a great model called Parakeet that does a lot of the transcription. PyAnote has put out some great models for diarization. So there's different model providers that help us structure on the memory side of things, all of the incoming audio and video so that our Noah agent can learn over that. And then for vibe mode, it's a whole different model that is optimized for coding. So
you have mentioned several times now about this ability to vibe code your app. So before we get even there, I would like to ask you, how are developers using Halo? Like, what are they building with it? And why they should at all in a market that now is competing for their attention, for their skills and their time, and they need to prioritize. So where do we stand with Halo? What are developers building on it?
Well, when we announced Halo, we received a rush of interest, and that's not hyperbole. We were inundated and still are. Email, LinkedIn messages. We've got a pretty vibrant Discord server, so people coming into the Discord and reaching out to us, and it's been wonderful. I've been on customer calls almost nonstop since we announced Halo. It's people from the healthcare space looking to deploy Halo and their AI solution across, healthcare, doctors, nurses, frontline workers, people who are in the building architecture, renovations, maintenance space, doing work on physical infrastructure, physical edifices. It's folks in manufacturing and construction, of course, folks in agriculture. And agencies of all sort that are building end user applications and want to be able to quickly spin up proof of concept apps or an experience for a client to try on. So since Frame, our platform is open source. And so most of the people who buy our devices, they're people who want to build on top of our devices, which is very powerful and very gratifying. So we've always tried to learn as much as we can about what they're trying to build and how we can better serve them. And so last year, we rewrote our entire SDK to allow people to do that better. And then a few months ago, we just started to track some of the evolution in the vibe coding space. I think we're all conscious that there's still challenges there. There's a lot of room for growth for it to really reach a point of maturity when you can just, close your eyes and vibe away and count on getting something foolproof, no hallucination, high quality. We're still a little distance from that, but it's at a point now where we felt it would be interesting to incorporate that for more and more people, even without a technical background, to spin up an experience for Halo. So what that means is if you want to, trigger the sensors on the device based on what they see and then what that displays to you. So if you see a cat, show me an identification of that cat in front of my eyes, what kind of cat they are and how I should take care of them. If you see a math problem on the whiteboard, then solve that math problem and show me the answer and show me step by step how you solved it. So using natural language, we wanted to allow people with an idea like this, even if it's just in the moment, to be able to quickly speak that to Noah, have that coded, and have that seamlessly uploaded to their device. So we think it's going to be really powerful. And over time, as the models become more capable, we're going to train that on our platform, the parameters, the SDK, the hardware constraints, so that it becomes increasingly reliable. And it may very well be the future of how you build for computers, that you don't need to hire a whole app development team. You can just, it's as quick as the idea in your mind.
And especially, I think when the level of when we're talking about something simple, because I think, like, going back to what you said, right, there was this vision where there were like 3D objects and interactive experiences floating in 6DoF around you. The level of complexity is certainly higher than when you're talking about some uses that are instead more geared towards use day. Like, it has a utility behind it, right? And so how do you see that, in a sense, like, if I build something like that, would then another user be able to build on top of it or use it straight away? Because that's the natural follow-up question, I would say.
That's right. Yeah, no, you're a few steps ahead. I mean, that's exactly what we've, got in mind here, is that when you build it, and if it makes you smile or if you have some utility from it, then yeah, we want to make that really easy for you to then share with the community, almost in a way that an app might be shared, in a store setting to be discovered, and for you to discover what others have built, to be modified or remixed. So that's very much sort of the network effect that we want to build on top of this whole space, is not only allowing you, whoever you are, whatever your technical background, as long as you have an interesting idea, we want to allow you to build, and we want to allow you to share, and we want to allow you to play with what other people have built. And for any of us who were ever children, that should feel familiar. So that's what we want to bring computing back to.
So you have not long ago mentioned about different verticals, right? Healthcare, construction, agriculture, manufacturing. So for who is Halo really? Because if you're telling me that a lot of people that are the one buying Halo are the one developing for it, the first conclusion that I would, let's say, draw a bit is this is not for consumer first, but it's maybe for businesses or others that want to build on top of it. Can you tell us for who this is, let's say right now, and maybe how are those companies in that case, let's say, leveraging it more in detail?
Yeah, well, and this dovetails nicely with the previous question. So today, we view our immediate customer as people looking to build on top of, Halo, on top of our platform. So those range from deeply technical developers to folks who are hobbyist, developers, hackers, people who have a crazy idea and, they have a weekend to spare here and there, and they want to hack on some cool hardware and show their friends, and anyone in between. So that is the bulk of our customers today. And I mentioned a few industries just now, but like half of the AI companies in Silicon Valley, half of the AI research labs, half the robotics research labs all over the world, from Tokyo to Boston to Dubai, and everyone in between, they have purchased our previous device frame and are purchasing Halo. So that's been super cool to see. So that's our customer today. Now, one of the reasons why we felt compelled to start building out Vibe Mode is because we're eager to see the definition of a developer expand. So we will always be a platform for people to build. And indeed, we think that's where humans are at their best, is when we're exercising our agency, our creativity, and we have tools that bring those things to life. So we always want to be a platform to help people realize that. But the definition of who a developer can be today is still quite limited. And we're eager to see that expand. So that will also in turn expand the addressable market. And that's also why we've put so much effort to sort of bring it full circle into how thin, how light, and how long the battery life lasts on our devices, let alone the affordability. $299 for Halo, that's mass market pricing. So we always wanted to keep it there.
And this is another point, because, so if you're saying, okay, a lot of our customers are companies, and as it sounds, some of the biggest company in the world, right? If you're telling me AI companies, and then you push out a market at $299, right? Is it? I mean, can you explain us? Can you explain us that? Because it feels like if I'm selling to companies, then I could make bigger margin, or I could build a better hardware, right? Because again, it's a very, very fine-tuned balance that I'm pretty sure you have grown into over the years. So what's with the 299?
Yeah. I mean, this is very simply, and me and our team, we're naive about a lot of stuff on the marketing side. So point in case, like we've never had a whole marketing department splashing money on paid marketing and influencers and ads and just what a lot of our competitors do. We just sort of speak from the heart, and everything's organic with us. Sort of what you see is what you get, and in the same way, we want our pricing to just be affordable. Uh, we've got margin for every unit sold, so we're not losing money. We couldn't afford that. But we just looked at the market when we first started the company. We just thought, devices that are like $600, $700, $800, $900, let alone $3,500. It's just not right. Like, it's just not the right way to bring novel technology into the world. We just don't believe in that way of doing technology. Like, if you can't price it for the mass market, then it's just not baked. It's just not ready. And so we always felt like we always challenged ourselves that unless we could offer a beautiful, affordable device that was still open source, had the full range of sensors, and allowed people to do some pretty cool stuff on top, unless we could do that at that price point, then it really just wasn't right to offer that to market. So by offering it at that price point, we're also implicitly sending the signal to the rest of the industry that the next generation of computing ought not to cost an arm and a leg.
So when we think about where this technology is going, right, and more broadly AR glasses, there is still a lot of, let's say, technological barriers that have to be overcome. Some of those can be done with shelling and throwing money at it, right, and losing money on each piece of device that you sell. That is a ways, and some
it happens. Some companies do it.
Some companies do it. But what do you think is the next, or maybe the needed technological breakthrough, right, to move forward? And I don't want to ask lead questions, right? But when I always think about this, there are two elements that in my head always kind of like pop up back. And one is, of course, the visual, so the display element. So how much of this digital content can you or you want to have in your view? And the other, I feel, is still input. Because I think that the way to input or to interface with this AI also need to evolve, right? I mean, the bands from the Ray-Ban, for example, it is, I have not tried it, but I do believe it is a way in which that is evolving and is moving forward. Because again, you will not be able to always speak to input to your device, for example, right? So maybe you might use indeed your phone, right? And that's fine. Or maybe there will be other ways. So maybe we can start from there in a sense more broadly, but what it is needed in terms of technological advancement next?
Well, I think you listed the two that are top of mind for me. I mean, so you've clearly been thinking about this space yourself, Gabrielle. It's on the display side and it's on the interface side of things. I would actually put interface as a higher priority. We were encouraged. I mean, we thought that the neural band that Meta showcased was really cool, probably the coolest part of their entire announcement. And we knew people from the Control Labs team that they bought, to make that neural band happen. So super cool technology. Whether that's ultimately the right technology, I think that makes sense if you're looking to scroll through content in the way that you might scroll through Windows on a phone or on a tablet. But is that the right interface for glasses? And therefore, is that the right modality? That's the open question that we have, and we don't know the answer yet. What I can say is that there is an interface that is not yet there. It's still sort of in the lab. We're in touch with some folks working on it, and we're hopeful to be able to offer it in a future device that we make. But it's not quite there yet. And I think it's the kind of thing that when it's there in front of your eyes, I think people will see it as the obvious endpoint for interacting with devices like this.
people would hate me if I don't ask you a follow up. Like, can you share anything about it? Like, and if you can't, you can say no, I can't, and it will be totally fine. But I need to ask because otherwise, people say, Gabriele, we always love the questions you ask, and I know that they will get back to me and tell me, Gabriele, what about that? Right? So, can you share anything about it?
Yeah. I probably shouldn't. I mean, what I can say is the best interface is, or the most seamless interface is, is all the way upstream. It's at the point of thought, and everything else is downstream. Everything else is derivative from that. So as close as you can get to the source, that's as natural and as seamless it will feel for you to interact with the device. So that's where our heads are at. No pun intended.
And we'll leave it at that. And I think that's probably where a lot of people are thinking about. No pun intended.
No pun intended.
Then, but you were mentioning about the interface, and then there was a display side of things, right?
Yes.
Because again, we are talking about just text. We're talking about attached to your face with colors. You're talking about 6DoF floating, anchored to the world. I mean, this is not sci-fi, right? I mean, that's what the spectacle does. So, what is your take about display?
Display is essential. It's really important. Obviously, we approach display a little bit differently. We don't try to maximize field of view. We're happy with 20, 25 degrees field of view. We think that's more than enough to drive a set of use cases that are oriented around AI inference, rather than, going through short form videos in front of your eyes, or like watching a YouTube video in front of your eyes. Like, so we don't have the kind of emphasis on large field of view that many other companies have. And following from that, that has downstream implications then for what kind of display you need to select, and what kind of, battery capacity, and, all of that stuff. So we tend to think about it in terms of, like, you want to live in full color. And so you want your display to also reflect that. You want that to bring all the vibrancy and the fun of full color. We think monochrome green is a bit of a drag, a bit dystopian. So we've never been fans of monochrome green, even though that's where a lot of people have gravitated towards by necessity, not because they want to, but by necessity. Other than that, we try to look for displays that are really tiny, like some of this large stuff, 0.6, 0.7 inch, we're like, get that out of my face. If I want a tablet, then I would just buy a tablet. I want something that's the size of my pinky nail, so that I can do a really tiny, something that looks like this. I want to keep it this form factor. I want to keep it this weight. I want to keep it this cost, because that means all day wearability. That means it looks beautiful. That means it's affordable. And that's what you need glasses to be. If you violate any of those principles, they're not glasses anymore. They're not, at least not viable. So we look for displays and display technology that allows us to stick within those confines. And right now it's few and far between. So we find ourselves, having some challenging conversations with optics and display suppliers, really bucking the trend. What people regularly tell us in the supply chain is, like, really? You guys want stuff that's restrained and simple and small? Like, that's what I want out of glasses. But all of these other companies, they come to us looking to maximize FOV and this and that, and it becomes a bit of a Frankenstein device. So yeah, I think we think really differently about this than a lot of other companies. But it is a challenge, but probably in a different way than it is for other companies.
So what's next? In a sense, more broadly for Halo and for the AR wearable industry. What do you think can we expect? And not in 5-10 years from now, but I'm talking about 2026, 2027.
Yeah, well, I mean, this year's been fascinating because we've seen volumes start to get interesting. I think the supply chain, our sense in talking to suppliers is that they're finally taking this space seriously. Before, you'd really need to push hard to get suppliers to take the space seriously, because they typically don't move until there's volume there. So, Meta announcing the Meta display, I think, has kicked off an arms race in the supply chain, and we'll start to see some of that come to fruition in 26, 27. This year, there's sort of a double-headed hydra that is not so good for the industry. One is a lot of software companies in San Francisco, like they're software founders, they tend to be kids out of college, and they like the idea of also making hardware. And so they'll go and they'll find some factory in China typically, and the factory will say, well, we have glasses ready for you, and they'll slap their brand on it. And so they call themselves AI hardware. So we're seeing a few companies like that, and VCs don't know the difference. So they throw money at them and, they're off to the races. So I think that's one unhealthy trend for the industry because there's no originality there. There's no roots in the soil there. And the software guys don't know the difference. I think the other one is we're seeing a lot of those same factories spin up brands and market those off-the-shelf AI glasses as just Meta Ray-Ban copycats. And there have been like dozens of these. Every week there's a new one. And every week the name gets harder to pronounce because it makes less sense. But
and I think that if we look at Asia side of things, I think that is even the bigger extent, like in a sense, because I've seen some time on Twitter and I'm like, what is this? Is this even a glass? Where was this coming from?
And what you're seeing there is, in a way, it's a compliment to China. I mean, the might of the Chinese supply chain, industrial policy in China is incredible. And this is all strategic technology. So as much as those homegrown brands, really factories, can be encouraged to spin up a brand, and just start flooding the marketplace with cheap OEM off-the-shelf, again, AI glasses, which really are just copycats of the Meta Ray-Bans, it's in the supply chain's interest because that just drives their learning and development. So, those are the double-headed hydra trends of this year that we actually don't think are so healthy for innovation. But I think what Meta's doing, as much as we might have a difference of philosophy in terms of how to approach product, and I admire that they've been driving a lot of volume. They've been, educating the consumer, really growing the market for everyone. And I think, when you're a company that's founder-led like them and you can afford to lose billions of dollars subsidizing the hardware, the marketing, and the AI inference for these products, literally billions of dollars, then, that's what they feel they need to do. So that's been also interesting to see this year. It's really opened things up.
And to close it up, what about Halo?
Yeah, for Halo, again, we're going to make a big announcement, a feature that we haven't announced yet, and we're going to announce it at launch day. And we think that's going to make people think differently about what this type of device can be in your life. Given all of the amazing development in agentic AI and like trusting an autonomous fleet of agents to be scouring your digital life, even while you're just present with the people and the place around you in your physical life, and trusting that those agents understand you and have your best interests at heart and are proactively in touch with you for what you need to know. So, it's got tectonic platform implications, and we think it'll shift how people think about, app development, like that paradigm in this new era. It won't look like mobile. We think it should look like something else. So that'll, I think, very much drive the Halo trajectory going into 2026.
BOBAK, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you, Gabriel. Great to be with you again.
Thank you very much for listening in. If you like the show, remember to leave a rating on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or a thumbs up on YouTube. It really helps me keep doing this and shine the spotlights on the greatest founders and makers, pushing the boundaries of XR and AI. Also, make sure to check out the show page xraispotlight.com, where you can find more conversation like this one. Till next time.